In the physical world, there is physical currency. Money is considered the sign of wealth. And the keen interest in what one can buy, afford with money. But in the spiritual realm, there is a different kind of currency. And it can afford far greater things. I have to go inside, inwards, to accumulate that spiritual currency. It is the value of one's own self. Beneath all the layers and labels, roles and responsibilities, I arrive at a very pure sense of myself. I, the soul, this body, and that alone makes me of great value. But also contained within me are all the things I've been seeking outside, trying to get through physical wealth, through money. Within me is peace, love, honor, and deep contentment, fullness. In the awareness of being a soul, that spark of light inside this body, making this body move. I can begin to experience those treasures within the self. Look less and less for them outside, and demand them less and less of others. Accumulating the currency of personal value. I can afford so much with that currency. I can afford to accept others, understand others, appreciate others, and trust others. Such a great currency, this spiritual wealth of personal value. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and welcome to Raja Yoga interview this evening. And so we have changed the format a little bit, changed the timings, and so we'll keep reminding souls through the website and email of the changes. But tonight's session is about trusting the self and others, but we speak so much about trust and self, and what is that connection to trust with others, trusting others. So I know that this has been a big theme for over the last few weeks for many of the students, and I know this has been something that you've been thinking a lot about, and so perhaps maybe I caught that feeling, thought that we should really explore that. I feel it's very important. I've discovered for myself these last few weeks as well. What has the experience been?
Well, I think, often we say that what the world needs now is love. And there's all these different shades of love. And trust is one of them. And of course, it's such a mature quality, this form of love, to be loving unconditionally. And it's absolutely essential to have trust, but it requires, I think, such a depth and a maturity and fullness in the soul. So it really keeps coming back to the stage of the self. When we look at so many aspects, how we've started to think things have to happen, on the outside. But when we go into a spiritual practice, it's sort of bringing the focus back to what is my personal responsibility and how can I, what do I need? What changes do I need to make rather than what changes does someone else need to make? And that appeals to some people and it doesn't appeal to others, but I think it would be essential in something like trust. What needs to happen inside of me?
What do you feel is the reason why it matters to some and not to others? Not like there's judgment, it doesn't matter to others, but what seems to be something that makes one really care about this aspect?
I guess, and I think deep down everyone probably does care, but, sometimes we talk about life as a stage and every soul has a different part to play. And it just depends on the part that one is meant to play on the stage of life. And that will create certain, if you will, interests in the soul or feelings in the heart of this is what I need to do because the part I am meant to play is inviting me or invoking me to do that.
Yeah, I know you're in a part of a lot of planning teams and a lot of just teams. And what has your experience been like in terms of this journey of trust since you've maybe even before being in the study, being in the study now for I think almost for 30 years?
I think where it sort of goes sideways is actually trust rhymes with lust. And if there's these sort of expectations or demands and they aren't fulfilled, then we say, I can't trust them. And what happened was I had expectations and they did not fulfill them. There was something I wanted from them, however reasonable or unreasonable it might be. And instead, what I love about teams is coming with an attitude of appreciation. Yes, they're still going to contribute something, but I like to let them contribute their speciality, not expecting they need to be like this or they need to do that, but just really appreciating how they are. And really, turning the tables that we kind of have to become trustworthy rather than expecting a lot from others.
Could you say that trust and respect is synonymous, or it's not about the semantics again, but I seem connected?
Yeah, I feel it takes a lot of self-respect or deep contentment to not expect things of others, such we say, oh, they did not, I can't trust them. So yes, with that fullness of self-respect, there would automatically be respect for others, which includes that trust. I trust they're doing exactly what they need to do. Mhm.
No, it's interesting. The theme for tonight, for those who are regular students, was about mercy and disinterest.
Mm.
And like a disinterest in going into waste, a disinterest in going into the details and, I'm right, you're wrong, sort of a thing. What is that relationship in terms of this maturity and therefore trust?
We had a really beautiful title in class this morning. It was Raj Rishi, and I really love the way it was defined. So Rishi is the disinterest you're talking about. Again, to not feel so affected or influenced or needy, if you will, of others. But Raj is one who is a master of the self. So I'm able to, have that mastery over my thoughts and feelings and attitudes. And those two things really go together. Again, I'm being liberated from expecting so much from others and rather free to look at elevating my stage so I can actually give something useful to others so they can then trust me. It's an interesting thing. Sometimes I find that through that regard and through that contentment and through that, not pressuring souls, they have to be this way or that way. It kind of helps them to be more trustworthy, like you're creating a space in which souls kind of can operate at their best. So having that maturity to create those kinds of spaces because I have such mastery over myself.
Do you feel that this is sort of an innate nature? Because I have a physician that I work with, and I notice the soul never goes into that stuff.
Mm,
And even if others might be complaining about someone, whoever it is,
mm.
this soul just doesn't engage, doesn't get defensive or anything, just very naturally redirects or just, I don't know, it's actually a very beautiful quality.
Yeah, no, they're fortunate. I know that we often use the example of one of the first students of the organization, Daddy Golzar, how she innately was free of a lot of waste thoughts and such, and that was recognized. So she was allowed to be in environments where that could stay intact, if you will, and protected. But she just innately was not just predisposed to go into all of that waste. So yes, for some, when I was in dance school, it was very interesting. There was two groups: those who it seemed were natural dancers that came very naturally, and those who it was felt they had to work a little harder. But they both kind of land up in the same place if they want it. Some have natural ability, but they don't really take care of it. And some do not have natural ability, but they really cultivate it. So it's not so much that I need to necessarily have that innate or naturally come with it. I think it is innate to the human spirit, but we all change. But at least I have to have an interest or feel that's an important stage to develop, is to be free of a lot of that unnecessary thinking.
So it's interesting because it really feels like trust isn't something that's really visible. You can try to tell someone, I trust you and so forth, but it feels like it goes deeper.
I think one has to feel it, and they probably would feel it without saying. They don't feel the judgment, right? I mean, things really go sideways when there is that, again, pressure or expectation or judgment or critical just attitude or vision. But if it's very pure and respectful, then the souls kind of rise to the occasion. And if there's something going on in the soul such that they still, act in a certain way that some might find disturbing, having to have so much maturity to understand why that's happening for that soul.
I feel that, in a sense, trust creates a feeling for others and emerges the best in them. How does that work?
I think that purity, period, or love, period, creates an environment that melts ego, which is really what's causing all the difficulty. So we want to create these environments, but it really has to be genuine. for it to work, then the soul feels very comfortable and safe. But yeah, these different shades of love that can melt the ego or the defensiveness, which is where that not operating at my best or being not very trusting comes from. So to create a very comfortable and loving environment.
And so I know that we've been talking a lot about trust in others, but this aspect of self-trust, it seems like, again, it feels very connected to self-respect.
I think yes, that I think it's the biggest one actually is trust of self. And it is a form, very deep form of purity. So again, that's such a focus in the spiritual study is that sort of journey towards purity. And the really deep form of purity is self-trust or self-faith, self-confidence, self-belief. We really kind of let ourselves down. And all that happened was that we, for understandable reasons, we forgot ourselves. We performed actions which went against our principles. And so we kind of started to lose faith in the self. So we're given two tools in spirituality. One is the knowledge to understand why that happened. Some might call it forgiveness, but it's really the knowledge to understand why that happened and to the power to reverse the situation. And so if I need to accept that knowledge, the understanding that yes, I was very trustworthy and I understand how I performed actions against my principles. So there's the power of that compassion or understanding, and also taking power through yoga such that I can overcome those habits that got me into trouble in the first place. So,
It's interesting because I didn't realize, or I forgot until you're sharing me now, that self-trust was one of the hugest things that I was looking for coming into this study, or I was struggling not feeling like I had self-trust. And what have you felt is going on inside? Because it's, well, I know you're mentioning about this aspect of faith in the self and self-confidence and so forth, but not, it's as if there's not to be able to actually recognize or um, the clarity of what needs to happen in terms of decisions.
right. So it's as if we were very unified and harmonized inside originally, which is called actually yogi. Yogi means very united. And then a duality emerged. There was the self and then this kind of ego or this image emerged. And that's like this little voice that is keeps saying, you can't trust yourself, right? You cannot be relied on. And so what we spend a lot of time doing is just cultivating that self-respect, because self-trust doesn't mean that I'm not going to make mistakes or anything like that, but in the face of mistakes I'm still valuable, right? That's kind of the essence why we say it's a form of purity. Even when I make a mistake, I'm still valuable, because that kind of attitude towards the self allows me to correct the self, have faith in the self, develop the self. So I need to have a very consistent sense, unshakable sense of my own value, or we say pure pride in the self, so that I can embark on a journey of transformation, with deep faith that I can reach the destination. I remember this was a big part of dance study. Sometimes the instructor would show us crazy choreography, or you watch little children who are even learning to walk, quite frankly, but learning these incredible dance movements, athletic or gymnastic, and they just seem to have so much trust in themselves. They're falling or whatever the case, but they just have this purity inside, this faith in the self that enables them this untouchable sense of value. So I can make mistakes but learn from them and keep moving forward. So it doesn't mean I'm not going to make mistakes or be corrected or any of that, but I have such a deep sense of my own value that I can make this journey.
It's quite interesting then, because then it's not necessarily really don't trust my thoughts as much as it's deeper. I don't have a contentment with myself, regardless of what decision is made.
Yes, it's unshakable. I'm always touched when I listen to the original jewels or students of this study. They had that deep purity, self-trust. So even if they were insulted or made a mistake, it did not shut them down. Their self-belief was untouched. So they could do something useful with those mistakes or those insults or whatever the case, or those challenges. They did something useful with them in their own development rather than being overwhelmed by them and losing that faith in the self.
It's interesting. We mentioned something about self-confidence, and there's a difference from real self-confidence and just one that's run by ego or arrogance, and it's actually a lot of insecurity going inside. It feels like self-trust is also in that category too, in the sense that I'm right, you're wrong. I trust my thoughts and my decisions and my perspective. But it's not really actually the real thing again.
It won't. And a true self-trust actually cultivates trust in interaction. So if I'm doing something that's actually, we say creating an account, but actually sort of creating more and more walls or lack of trust or distance, then I probably don't have the real thing. Because with self-trust, there's no desire really to prove the self right. There's just the desire for something beneficial, to move things forward. And again, others will feel comfortable around that soul, not challenged or threatened by that soul. So it's not the arrogance of self-trust, but it's really, such a comfort with the self that there's nothing to prove.
It's beautiful when you're sharing. So it's making me think that when there is that natural trust in self and you can naturally trust others, others actually become very loyal. Like not loyal to you in that sense, but just it's just the relationship with one another. It's very beautiful.
And I think, you get to start playing this beautiful role of cultivating, almost like a gardener. You're starting to create, really cultivate the best in others. It's not just about, what do I get that I win their loyalty, which is wonderful, wonderful. But again, I'm not doing it because I need that. It's just a natural expression of that pure feeling towards the self. You just have this attitude towards others. Today it was quite funny because I had to keep interacting with the soul, and every time I talked to them, they were absolutely overwhelmed. Kept saying, yeah, no, I'm going to get back to you in 5 minutes, and hours would go by. Did I lose trust in them? No, I understood what was going on. And eventually, and I could tell they felt awful about the last thing they need is for me to get upset and suggest I don't trust them and they've lost my faith and they've lost my business. So when I'm talking to them, they're apologizing. I said, no, it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And you could see how hard they were working to deliver for me and not feeling that pressure, not feeling like it's because I'm angry or don't trust. I totally trust them, but how can we ensure that they get to, because if the soul does not operate at their best, they start to lose faith in themselves. So you kind of have to, there was such a beautiful sharing today about Daddy Genki, who was the third administrative head of the organization, whose order, one of the spiritual heads of the organization. It was said that while everyone else might lose faith in someone, she would not. She never gave up on anyone, never gave up, never lost trust in the soul, faith in the soul. And I've been feeling that's a very powerful seed. And I felt that in myself, even though she's transitioned, as we say, I still can feel, I can now feel the fruit of that kind of attitude. She's already gone, but I feel the fruit of that. Like it's a very powerful seed to plant in another soul. No matter how many times they make mistakes, that unshakable trust in them is a very powerful seed, and it will bear fruit. It might not be while they're there, in her case, but it will bear fruit.
It's interesting, like, what does it reveal the kind of soul that she is to have such relentless trust in others?
I think she had the fortune of a lot of faith being placed in her so that she could cultivate this very deep faith in herself. Like a lot of time was spent cultivating that in her, and she understood and developed that deep faith in herself. So she can, to me, it's like this currency of purity. There's a lot of very beautiful things one can afford when they have a big stock of pure feelings inside. They can afford to be tolerant, they can afford to forgive, they can afford to be gracious, and they can afford to trust. They're not bargaining. If you do this, then I can forgive you. If you do this, then I can trust you. They don't need to. They have so much wealth, so much purity that they can afford no conditions. They afford to trust.
There's some pictures of Daddy Janky when she's very young, and she's even shared stories, and she's so humble. It's like she's like, when I first came into the study, someone would just walk behind me and I would just jump. I'm just so terrified, and just the things that she's gone through. So it's just this amazing transformation, that trusting the self. I feel God really trusted her that. And it's interesting because it's not like she has to try to trust others. It's just very natural. Like when one's healthy, what comes from that is very natural.
Yes, if you have the right seed inside of yourself, then of course you're very experienced and can plant that seed in others. And that's all you focus on nurturing. And it's, I remember once a soul sharing a story that they were in a group dynamic, and the group had been together a little bit, but a new one was introduced into the group. And this new one almost immediately started to seem to irritate the others in the group. And they really weren't feeling close or trusting that soul. But there was one who, again, those two powers of, those two aspects of understanding powers, one who really could understand. It's always lack of of purity. So they really understood what was going on with that soul. Whenever they were with that soul just one-on-one, that soul felt very safe with them and really operated in a very different way. And what they got, so it brought out the best in that soul. It turned out that soul is extremely loyal, like it's very, very reliable. But others were not getting the chance to see that because they weren't watering that seed. But they got to experience and how loyal that soul was, how trustworthy. They give a shirt off their back, as they say. So have I gotten a good stock of self-trust inside, such that, again, whatever's inside is what I will share, such that I can share that with others and kind of nurture that in them. It's in there. It's in every human soul, these qualities.
It's such a powerful topic. I wish we could continue, but we will have a little reflection. Thank you.
Our world at this time is demanding. That we rise to the occasion, that we access within the self what we call the greatness of the human spirit. We can rely less and less on what's happening around us for comfort, support, care. We have to look more and more inside for those qualities. And there's a beautiful spiritual law that if I can activate these deep qualities of benevolence within the self and share them with others, they will increase. This deep form of purity within the depths of the soul, experiencing my own value, my own worth, intrinsic, deep respect for the self, dependent on nothing and no one. To cultivate that seed within the self and let it color how I interact with others, so that it might awaken that seed within them as well. To trust the self, so that I no longer need to have that trust shown from others, but can help others to see how they can trust themselves as well. This is what time is calling us to do, creating that kinder world from the inside out through such pure feeling. It's not about who's right or wrong. It's about having a very, very big heart. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Thank you to those for joining with us this evening. As usual, if you have questions, comments, topics, you're welcome to type in the chat box and we will take note of them. So we just want to also let souls know that we have a lovely Diwali program that is coming up in about 2 weeks' time, Sunday, October 23rd, on site at the Scarborough Hall here in Calgary. I don't think at this point in time we'll be able to live stream until we can sort things out at that hall. But for those who actually live in Calgary, unless you plan to fly into Calgary, you're welcome to join. The details are on the website. We have a lot of sessions that are being offered at the Inner Peace Center, also called the Northeast Center. And we'll also be having something at the Academy as we did before the pandemic. So stay tuned for that. Again, the website, we're trying to update it as soon as possible. And so any questions, please let us know. Om Shanti.